Hi, today I am doing a project that I've wanted to do for a very long time. I'm going to be kitbashing my own Tyranid biotitan using an actual lobster. Just to get this out of the way, if you think this idea is gross or weird, you're totally right, and it's not going to be for everyone. But if you are squeamish, just know I'm only going to be showing the shells on camera. If you want to know how to cook and remove all the meat from a lobster, you can watch Gordon Ramsay do it, but I think it's a little bit weird for a video like this, so we're just going to cut to cleaning the shells. My personal philosophy is that this is a way of using every part of the animal. I'm taking the parts that would normally be discarded, and I'm using them to make art, and I think that's pretty cool. Also, this idea was stolen from my friend Garrett over at Weldhammer, who did it first, so if you think this project is unethical, gross, or just an abomination, you can voice your concerns at Weldhammer on Instagram. I'm from Nova Scotia, which is on the east coast of Canada, and it's kind of just where lobsters come from, and because of this, lobsters are everywhere. You see them in decor, in graphic design, in art. I did my own series of paintings inspired by lobsters. It's a whole thing. So once I saw Garrett's project where he was kitbashing with shells to make Warhammer, I knew I had to try it for myself. I watched a lot of videos on how to taxidermy shellfish, which is going to make my algorithm really weird, but what I learned is that everyone does things slightly differently. When doing taxidermy, you have to be very precise in order to preserve the shells in a way where they can easily go back together and look like they were never preserved. But luckily for me, I'm not trying to create a lobster, I'm trying to create a horrible alien monstrosity. But what is super important is that I clean and preserve these shells properly so that later this model doesn't smell like what Tyranids probably actually smell like, which is putrid, hot fish garbage. So after removing all the meat and making delicious lobster rolls, what you'll need to do is get any remaining meat out of the shells. I went in and poked and scraped with a bunch of different tools to make sure that I got absolutely everything out. Real taxidermists will put the shells in a tank with flesh-eating beetles, but I've seen the mummy too many times to mess around with flesh-eating beetles. So after I cleaned the shells as thoroughly as I could, I put them in a solution of bleach. This is about 1 part bleach to 8 parts water. This will kill the bacteria and help with that fishy smell, but it might make your whole house smell like bleach instead. Some of the videos I watched used bleach for this, others used peroxide. I had bleach on hand, so that's what I used. And I wasn't worried about bleaching the color because I knew I was going to paint it later. After letting them sit in bleach for a couple of minutes, I took them out, washed them again, and then I did a quick smell check. Once I was satisfied with their scent, I dried them off and then I put them in the oven at its lowest setting to bake. When I took them out of the oven, I noticed the main shell had warped quite a bit. This was unfortunate, but maybe a blessing later on. If I were to do this again, I would create some sort of structure to preserve the shell's shape as it dries. Fortunately, none of the claws warped. Once they cooled down, I took them out to my shed to spray them with a polyurethane top coat. This will lock everything in and create an extra protective barrier. I live in Montreal and it is so cold right now. The glove I was using to hold the shells had a hole in it, so as I was spraying, my hand was getting wet and it got so cold it felt like my fingers were gonna fall off. But I fought the cold, I made sure everything got sprayed, and then I ran back inside. The polyurethane wouldn't dry if it was too cold, so I brought them inside, and I covered them with a bin to help with the fumes a little bit. Would this have been a better project to do in the spring? Probably, but I'm already waiting for the spring to set up my 3D printer in the shed, and the truth is, there's never going to be a right time to start a project, and I've already put this one off for a year. I feel like there's always a reason to put off starting a project. For me, it was the fact that a small lobster costs like 25 bucks, but if you think about it, a Warhammer kit costs way more than that, so I'm actually saving money, and that's gamer girl math. Once the shells were dry, I needed to come up with a plan. And this is what I came up with. If you want to screenshot these for your own project, feel free. What I discovered is that this is not a project I could plan. I searched through all my bits boxes looking for anything that felt Tyranid-y, and I was surprised that I had a lot more than I thought. I've collected a lot of bits from friends and fans over the last couple of years. Between official Games Workshop models and knockoffs and failed 3D prints, I've got a lot to work with. I started studying Tyranid designs, and what I found was that Tyranids are extremely complex, highly detailed, very clean sculpts. So to save myself some time, I decided to do as little sculpting as I could possibly do, just a true kitbash. I'm basing my model mostly on the hierophant biotitan, but also the Tyranofex, and I am constantly referencing the 3D models available on the GW website. Being able to reference these 3D models is an extremely useful tool when you're making your own models. So the first problem I faced was that the shells were really hard to work with. They don't really cut, they just shatter. You're gonna see a lot of that in this video. It feels less like working with plastic and more like working with glass. I found the best way to make cuts was to score the edge I wanted to cut, take my snippers, and just pray that it worked out. The rotary tool was a bit better at cutting the shells, but I tried to avoid it because it basically is creating bone dust, which is very harmful to your lungs. For the most part, I just tried to avoid cutting the shells and just use them as is, but to create the swooping silhouette of a Tyranid biotitan, it couldn't be avoided. I had the claws, I had the body, and I just had to fill out the rest of the model with bits from around my studio. I'm working really quickly at this stage, just trying to sketch out the general idea of this creature. When it came to a part of the lobster that I really wanted to preserve, I made sure to be extra careful to... Moments like this made this project so stressful, but in this case, it snapped off at almost the perfect place, so luckily it was fine. It's not bad. One of the most consistent traits of Tyranids are the skeletal underbellies. In order to achieve this effect without sculpting a million ribs, I killed one of my Halloween decorations. This plastic bat once gave its life to bring my life whimsy, and now it's giving its unlife to become a horrible monstrosity for me. If you think it's wrong or gross to use anatomically correct bat skeleton replicas in crafting, you're right, and this video might not be for you. I had these leftover squig heads from my cat bus project, and I thought they would make a good base for the Tyranid head. Before I made too many decisions, I glued the whole thing together using hot glue, tinfoil, and parts of the bat skeleton as placeholders. Seeing how the whole thing is going to look got me really excited, and I was ready to move on. A fan sent me this winged Nazgul kit, which I'm going to use for something fun later, but for now I'm just going to steal its tail for this project. I found another 40K tail in my bits, but it looked a bit too mechanical, so I'm going to combine these two tails to create something that I like. For the end of the tail, I glued on some spikes and part of this Tyranid gun to make the whole thing feel more knitty. If you've been here before, you know I'm a lover, not a fighter. Which is to say, I love making Warhammer armies and I have no intention of ever fighting with them. Though I've done a little bit of research into Age of Sigmar and the Old World for my Goblin army, I know basically nothing about 40k, and I don't know where a lot of my bits come from. So please take any fake gamer comments you are going to address to women in this space and leave them down below, and don't forget to subscribe so you can tell me how dumb and wrong I am. The squig head I was using was definitely a strong start, but it was a bit too chonky, so I took a rotary tool and I cut out the neck. Then for the upper jaw, I took this alien dinosaur looking thing and glued it in place. These horns came from a model I got at Adepticon last year. I accidentally took a course on painting non-metallic metal. I don't know if I learned anything, but at the very least I got this model that I can destroy for this project. A lot of Tyranid models have their tongue sticking out, so I added this squig tongue. It's a little nastier than most Tyranid tongues, but this model is a little nastier than most Tyranid models, so I think it's okay. To tie the lobster back into this head, I took the horn from the shell and I added it to the front, and I think this looks so sick. Then to finish it off, I sculpted some classic Tyranid plates. It is really hard to sculpt this smooth and symmetrically, so huge shout out to the Tyranid kitbashers out there. Since I was using Milliput, I knew I could sand it later, so I wasn't worried about being absolutely perfect while I was sculpting. Finally, to attach the head to the body, I found this bit off of a 3D printed beetle creature. So like I said earlier, I'm trying to sculpt as little as possible. So to create the joint between the lobster claw and the leg, I'm using some actual Tyranid claws. This middle section of the leg, I think, is part of a bootleg Tyranid 3D print. It's looking great. Let's just compare. It's on backwards. I didn't really have any good bits for the thighs, so I sculpted them myself out of Sculpey. I used part of an old toothbrush as an armature and then sculpted with Sculpey over top. Once I was happy with the shape, I put it in the oven to bake, and then once it had cooled down, I sculpted more plates on top. Finally, I sanded those plates smooth and attached all the leg pieces together. I was happy with the general shape of the rib cage, but it had a lot of gaps in it that I knew I would have to fill. I knew I could fill these with milliput, but I was running low and it kind of just felt like a waste, so instead I opted for an old school crafting method and combined tissue with white glue. This was easy to work with, filled the gaps really quickly, and it dries to a nice hard paintable surface. Sometimes I feel like I can get stuck only using methods and materials that other Warhammer creators use, and I just forget about all of the methods that I learned as a kid. Using beads, hot glue, cardboard, paper mache are totally valid ways of making Warhammer models and terrain. I was so happy with this tissue white glue solution, I used it to fill basically all the gaps in this project. Then it came time to make the guns. For the bulk of the gun, I used these 3D prints which I believe were based on a hand-sculpted model, but I can't remember the artist's name. I cut those down to a gun shape, and then I sculpted the end with green stuff. I attached that gun to a Tyranid arm, and then I added some thick wire as tubing to run blood alien juice through. I don't know how Tyranid guns work. One of the most iconic parts of a Tyranid are the vent exhaust port things. So I made the bulk of them out of the plastic bat bones, but I made sure to make a couple using the lobster legs because I spent so long cleaning them, I was going to find a way to use them. With that, I had all the pieces and it was time to put it all together. And honestly, I didn't really like it. The biggest problem I had was with the guns. They looked like they would hit the head and the claws, and that just didn't make any sense. So I glued in some plastic tubes to see if lengthening the barrel would solve the problem. And it did. It looked a lot better. So cutting up more toothbrush pieces, I made some proper looking barrels for the end of this gun. To make the plates, I used Sculpey again, and then to make those gills, I tried using a wood burning tool. This didn't work as well as I wanted it to, but for such a small detail, it was fine. I added a few more Tyranid connection points to fill out the rest of the gun. Honestly, I thought these guns would be just a bit much, but they turned out to be my favorite part of the build, and when it comes to 40k, there's no such thing as too much. I needed to trust that it would all look good when it was put together, so I started attaching things permanently. I glued in the exhaust port things for the first time, and this really helped with the silhouette. I sculpted some finishing touches and added spikes to tie everything together. I could honestly keep adding detail forever, but at a certain point, you've got to call something done. The way I know something's done is if I work on it for hours and no one would be able to tell the difference, I know it's time to call it. This thing is nasty. I love it. I've heard a lot of people say that their favorite stage is when they can prime the model, but for me, this is my absolute favorite part. Seeing a model with all its Frankenstein parts, being able to see what is plastic, what was sculpted, and what is an actual lobster is so cool. I decided to start the year a little slower and really take my time with this project and this video because I got really burnt out. I really thought I would recognize burnout if it happened to me because I've heard so many artists recount their stories about having artistic burnout, but that's not what this was. I am an artist, but this was just regular burnout. For me, I was very inspired to make things. In fact, it was the only thing I wanted to do. It was everything else that felt bad. I think this was caused by a couple of things. Life was getting stressful, I took on too many projects, and I took on too many projects that didn't involve making things physically. For me to maintain my mental health, I need to balance things like writing and editing with making physical things and not working on a computer. But I'm feeling a lot better and I wanted to share what helped in case you're going through something similar. I took a couple days to actually relax. I have a bad habit of overstimulating myself and multitasking, maximizing my relaxation time by playing games while I'm watching a movie, but that is not actually relaxing. So I lied down, I spent time watching things that had nothing to do with videos or work or D&D and just enjoyed what I was doing. But unfortunately, the thing I think helped the most was I started exercising. I hate exercising, it never gets better for me, I never enjoy it, but I need it for my stupid brain. For me, this is just 15 or 20 minutes on a stationary bike, first thing in the morning, every day. And finally, when I was ready, I eased back into making stuff with a project that I was really excited about. I know that there are external factors making people feel not great, but I think it's even more important then to check in with yourself and make sure that your basic needs are being met. Are you socializing? Are you drinking water? Are you eating? Are you exercising at all? And are you creatively fulfilled? Try and check off those boxes one at a time, but you'd be amazed at what 15 minutes of doing a stupid little bike will do for your mental health. If you were good and you made it all the way to the end, I'll give you a little primer reveal as a treat. Though this isn't my favorite stage, it is extremely satisfying. Primer will always reveal the imperfections in your builds, but for me the best solution to this is undiluted gesso. I went in with gesso to fill any gaps and cracks to smooth any bad textures, and the great thing about gesso is it's already a primer, so you don't have to re-prime after this step. I'm insanely proud of this build, but this video's already gotten long. If you want to see me base and paint this, let me know in the comments below. I have no plans on making a Tyranid army right now, so if you really want this model, message me on Instagram and make me an offer. I need to pay rent. And if you want to help me pay rent every month, you can join me over on Patreon. Truly, I love making videos and I can only do it thanks to the people on Patreon. Every single person who donates helps me keep making videos and I cannot thank them enough. If you want to see me make more 40k content, let me know. I could be persuaded to make a demon or an orky machine or some terrain. As always, let me know what you want to see me make next time.